This year's NBA trade deadline was out of control, and I'm going to go through some of my biggest winners and losers at this year's deadline. I have to begin the video with one of the bigger winners of the deadline, and that is, of course, the Phoenix Suns. Anytime that you're bringing in a player the caliber of Kevin Durant and you're really pushing to win a title, you have to be a winner in my book. Even given everything that they gave up in the trade, Bridges, Johnson, all their future first-round picks, the day before they made the Durant trade, they weren't really a contender. They were kind of stuck in the middle. They've been dealing with injury issues all year. The vibes were weird, and then as soon as they make the Durant trade, they are now a contender. They're arguably the best team in the Western Conference. I think their title odds immediately went up to like second overall as soon as the deadline was over. It is an unbelievable move for them, something they've been planning since this past offseason. They finally were able to make it work. And yes, there are concerns here in terms of the value they gave up on into the future and the depth of their roster and the age and the injury concerns with both Durant and Chris Paul, what that could mean down the road, what DeAndre Ayton's role is going to look like, all that stuff, absolutely concerns. But when you make yourself a contender with one trade and you pretty much guarantee yourself that you're one of the better teams in the conference and in the league, you're a winner. Now, on the other end, a big loser for me is the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, even though I'm not a big D'Angelo Russell guy, we've talked about this in previous videos, I didn't really understand what exactly was happening here with Minnesota from a roster perspective. They're bringing in Mike Conley to be a veteran presence. They want to empower Anthony Edwards more to be the main focal guy offensively for them. They're not really seeing a future with D'Angelo Russell. His contract's coming up, all that stuff, I totally understand. But this is such limited value, even in exchange for a player in Russell that I don't really like that much to begin with. Like, yes, they're getting a couple of other young players and a couple of seconds in addition to Mike Conley, but basically you're giving away D'Angelo Russell, and that might help your team. There might be some addition by subtraction there, but given what you traded for Russell in the past and then the amount of value they just got in exchange for him at this deadline, I didn't really understand this, and specifically in terms of what it means for this season, I would have rather just kept Russell, maybe try and sign him, trade him in the offseason, but this felt like a real sell low, even on a player that I don't even like that much. Next up now, we go back to the winner side of things, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I loved the trade deadline for the LA Lakers. I felt like they got good value in the Westbrook trade. They only gave up one of their first round picks. They still have the 2029 first to use in the offseason or to just keep entirely down the road, depending on what happens with LeBron and Anthony Davis over the next couple of seasons. They get rid of Russ. It was clear that situation was not working and had not been working for a while. Russell replaces a lot of the offensive stuff that Russ leaves behind. And then Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt, as well as bringing in Mo Bamba, they've really reshaped this roster while only using up one of those first round picks and getting rid of Westbrook. I really like what they did at the deadline. I'm not saying it's going to make them top tier contenders or anything, but if you were going to make some moves and only trade away one first round pick, I'm not sure how you could have expected the Lakers to do any better than they did at this trade deadline. Next up now, a loser for me is the Dallas Mavericks. I talked about this in the Kyrie video at the time. You are attaching the future of your team, the possibility of Luka Doncic leaving your basketball team in a couple of seasons, to the most unpredictable player in NBA history, and that is Kyrie Irving. I have no doubts that for the first couple of weeks, maybe first couple of months, maybe even through this postseason, Kyrie's going to look awesome. The vibes are going to be good. He's going to be happy to be in a new place. I have no doubt that that's going to be the case. But the minute we get to the offseason, the minute there's a weird Kyrie comment, the minute there's a weird situation around Kyrie, if you're a Mavs fan, if you're around the league, you're going to start looking at this and thinking, man, this is going to get really weird really quickly. I feel like Finney Smith and Dinwiddie are starting level rotation players around the league. You give up a 2027 future first round pick as well. And if Kyrie leaves in the offseason, there's already been hints about him going to LA in a sign and trade. There's already been hints about him going to Phoenix in a sign and trade. You're jeopardizing the possibility of Luka becoming unhappy, seeing this as an unstable situation and potentially asking out and asking for a trade in a couple of seasons. I know that seems like a dramatic stance to take, but if you're going to do this, if you're going to trade for a guy on a 3-month contract, trade away 2 starters and a pick in exchange for him, it can't be for someone as unpredictable as Kyrie Irving. We have no idea what he's going to do this offseason. Yes, they could recoup some of that value in a sign and trade if he did go to one of these other teams that I mentioned earlier, but you still are not going to get that first round pick back. You might get a wing and a guard like you just traded away to Brooklyn, but I would be staying as far away from Kyrie as I could if I was a team like Dallas, who's in a very precarious situation, both in terms of assets, as well as their relationship potentially with their star player over the next couple of seasons. My next winner now is the LA Clippers. Yes, both LA teams in the winners section of an NBA trade deadline video. Who would have thought? I really felt like they did an awesome job bringing in players that are going to help them at this deadline. First of all, bringing in Bones Highland for what I believe was just 2 second-round picks is unbelievable value. I'd assumed that if Denver was going to trade him, it would be in exchange for a first-round pick. Apparently, the vibes were not very good there between Highland and just the rest of the team. It just didn't really work. But to be able to replace what is probably going to be the John Wall spot with a really explosive guard, a guy that can score, a guy that brings you some juice, some energy, some youth, and especially for a team like the Clippers that can surround him with good defensive players to where his defensive limitations really aren't as noticeable. I felt like that was a really good move for them. And then bringing in Eric Gordon, although they lost Luke Kennard, and I feel like Kennard was pretty important to them, that felt a little bit weird to me. Eric Gordon can guard a little bit. He can certainly shoot the ball. He can score, fits right into that Clippers team. Bringing in a little little bit more perimeter creation, a little bit more shooting, although the loss of Luke Kennard, I feel like those are two good moves for the Clippers, depending on what they want to do the rest of the year and into the next couple of seasons. If they're trying to push for a title this year, which it seems like they probably are, these kinds of moves, bringing in a little bit more perimeter punch, a real borderline starting level point guard in Bones Highland, I think those are absolutely good moves for them. Next up now, we go back to the loser side, and this is the Golden State Warriors. I was very concerned, or very confused, I should say, about what exactly they were trying to do at the deadline. We're getting rumors that they were going to trade James Wiseman in exchange for Sadiq Bey. I was like, okay, that makes a good amount of sense. Then Bey ends up going to Atlanta. They get 5 second-round picks in exchange for Wiseman, and then they send those 5 second-round picks to Portland in exchange for Gary Payton. This is just all around weird to me, not to mention the fact that Wiseman is the former second overall pick of the draft, and the amount of value they lost out on missing on that draft pick. But Gary Payton's the guy they could have just signed to the contract that he just signed with Portland this past offseason. They could have just signed him and used James Wiseman as a real trade asset. But now here we are a handful of months later, and they're just trading away Wiseman, who clearly didn't have a ton of value, but was worth at least something. They're just trading him away for a guy that they just let go in free agency in Gary Payton, who, yes, will help them, but I would have rather had Sadiq Bey if I was Golden State. If that was just an offer that was on the table, we could just do Wiseman for Sadiq Bey straight up. And I understand that there's tax savings here for Golden State. They are saving, a ton of money on the luxury tax and things like that. But specifically from a basketball perspective, they basically just cut James Wiseman. Like, Gary Payton's on the same contract that they could have signed him for in the offseason. Then they traded away Wiseman in exchange for him. They basically just released James Wiseman for absolutely nothing. And that felt very, very strange to me. In addition to the fact they didn't make any other moves, I really didn't understand what exactly was happening here. Moving on now to 2 more winners I want to cover pretty quickly here. I really like what Memphis did. They brought in Luke Kennard on a team that I feel like desperately needs perimeter spacing at times. And even though he doesn't perfectly fit with a lot of the defensive oriented guys they have, of course, he's not a great defender. He's one of the better shooters in the league, a player that I feel like really could have helped the Clippers and was helping the Clippers when they were playing him. He's going to fit in really, really well. They needed a little bit more proven top tier caliber shooting on this team. And Luke Kennard certainly is going to be able to provide that. And then another winner here for me is San Antonio. They have the trade where they're sending out Jakob Poeltl in exchange for a first round pick, basically top 6 protected from Toronto in 2024. You get the first round pick in exchange for a guy that's going to help Toronto, but obviously San Antonio wanted to move off the Poeltl contract. They wanted to trade him away, and a lot of teams are trading guys away like that for multiple second round picks, and to get the first top 6 protected just continues to help San Antonio build more towards the future. And then last up, it has to be mentioned, a huge loser for me is the Chicago Bulls. This is a team that was one of 2 teams in the entire league that did not make a trade at the deadline. It's them and Cleveland. Cleveland's on the up and up. Cleveland's, doing good things with the Donovan Mitchell trade and everything. And Chicago's just chilling there. They've got Levine, they've got Caruso, they've got Vooch, they've got DeRozan. Vooch is an expiring contract this offseason, and they just didn't do anything. They didn't even make any kind of lateral move. They didn't try and shake up things at all. They didn't trade for any picks. They didn't try and upgrade the roster. They just sat there and looked at the rest of the league. 28 other teams in the league and decided, you know what, we don't actually have to decide to do anything at this trade deadline. And for a team like Cleveland, it makes a good amount of sense. Yes, they could have used a wing, but they're going to be fine. They've got plenty of pieces. They look like a good team. They look like a top 5 team in the East. And Chicago is not that. They're very much a team that needs to make changes. We've been talking about them for months in terms of possible Levine trades. Vucevic, DeRozan, somebody had to go. They had plenty of valuable players on the roster, and they just straight up didn't make a move. To me, that's a huge out. Let me know down in the comment section what some of your favorite trades are from this trade deadline. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.